Hello, everybody. My name is David Rovallino. I am an economist. I work with international organizations in different countries on issues related to employment and public finance. And in this video, I want to tell you about some recent work we have been doing with colleagues at the International Labour Organization, trying to figure out how can countries better use the budget, the public budget, to improve employment outcomes for their citizens. Because they create more jobs, they improve the quality of jobs, they facilitate access to jobs to different population groups. Essentially, how can countries move towards what we call pro-employment budgets? And we just published a report on this work, and you can see the link there on the screen. Why? Why do we care about the public budget and its link to employment outcomes, to jobs? Well, the reality is that despite good intentions in the majority of countries, many people don't have jobs. Today we have more than 230 million people who are unemployed in the world. Add to that over 1 billion people who are inactive. They are not even participating in the labor market. And even worse, among the people who are working, they have a job. Well, the reality is that job is often of very low quality, either informal, they don't have access to social security, you are not paid, or the pay is below the minimum wage. Many of these people who have jobs actually live in poverty. And if you think about it, the best tools that governments have to address these problems is a public budget. Not only because they're able to maintain a certain level of aggregate demand and keep the economy going, but also because they can finance different policies and programs that can help solve these problems. And I'm not talking only about the budget and the programs managed by the Ministry of Labor, employment services, training programs, wage subsidies, others. No, I'm talking about programs managed by all line ministries. It can be investments in infrastructure, it can be programs that try to develop certain value chains, or to promote entrepreneurship, or to support small businesses, develop special economic zones, you name it. So governments can spend a lot of money in policies and programs that either improve employment outcomes or that can worsen employment outcomes. Now, the problem is that most governments are not thinking about what should be the link between the budget and employment labor market outcomes. In fact, not only they are not thinking about this often, they consider that it's not needed, because what countries should be doing is promoting private investments, promoting economic growth, and then jobs will follow. But now we know that it's not as simple. This idea in practice hasn't worked. It is not because countries are growing that they are creating enough jobs, or the type of jobs and the distribution of jobs within the country that you need to reduce unemployment rates for young people, or to increase participation rates for women, or simply to reduce inequality, to reduce poverty. So in the report, we argue that countries actually should define explicit objectives in terms of improvements in employment and labor outcomes, right? It's about job creation, the quality of jobs, access to jobs, have explicit objectives, and then use the budget to implement the policies and programs that can achieve those objectives. That is what it means to adopt a pro-employment budget. So what did we do? The first thing we had to do is to come up with a methodology to identify within the budget what we call employment-related public expenditures. So among all the things that governments finance, what are the policies and programs that are more likely to improve employment outcomes? And we came up with the simple definitions. We are going to focus on those policies and programs that try to do one of three things, explicitly or implicitly. One is creating jobs, policies that can contribute, programs that can contribute to create jobs. Number two, policies and programs that can contribute to improve the quality of jobs because they formalize these jobs, because they provide access to social security. And then programs that facilitate access to jobs. So any program within the budget that is able to do one of these three things, implicitly or explicitly, is considered into our calculations, let's say. All these employment-related public expenditures, you can group them, you can classify them in three categories. We use three categories. What we call macroeconomic policies, programs, things like tax incentives to mobilize investments to create jobs. Labor market policies and programs. There we would have things like employment services, training, wage subsidies, or simply access to labor regulations, minimum wages, access to unemployment insurance, that part. And finally, sectoral and regional policies and programs. I mentioned some of these before, with developing certain value chains, special economic zones, providing support to entrepreneurs or to small companies, access to finance, etc. You have that list also there in the screen, but once we came up with this classification, we simply went through the budgets of the different countries and calculated how much they were spending in these different policies and programs. But after that, we also wanted to ask a few questions, right? Beyond what is the level of expenditures in all of these policies and programs, we wanted to know what is the effectiveness of some of the programs. Are they really achieving the objectives for which they were designed? Are they cost effective? What is the incidence of the programs? Basically, who benefits from those expenditures by age, gender, economic region? Very important also, what is the consistency of these expenditures with national employment policies or national development plans? And finally, how efficient is the spending? We essentially calculated what countries should be spending and in what to achieve the objectives that they have outlined in national employment strategies. And I will tell you more about some of the results. We apply this methodology to 6 countries. 6 countries are included in the original report: Costa Rica, Guatemala, Tunisia, Namibia, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan. More recently, we have also done these calculations for Ecuador. So what are some of the findings? First of all, we found that countries spend very little on employment-related public expenditures. From 0.5% of GDP in the case of Tajikistan to 3.5% in Tunisia, so say an average of 1%. And this taking into account that public expenditures, total public expenditures, are in the order of 50% of GDP in Guatemala and over 40% in Tunisia. So governments have sizable expenditures, but employment-related public expenditures are a very small fraction of that. We also found several problems of consistency, meaning that many, exactly more than 2/3 of the programs that are outlined in national employment strategies are not funded, are not in the budget. And also problems of efficiency. We asked the question, how much these countries would need to spend and in what if they wanted to reduce unemployment and inactivity rates by 50% by year 2035, and if they wanted to have a growth rate of labor productivity on average of 3% per year. And the answer is that they will have to more than double what they spend right now in employment-related policies and programs. So Guatemala would need to spend, instead of 2.5% of GDP. Namibia close to 8% of GDP. And the fundamental question is, why is this happening? Why the low level of expenditures? Why the problem of inconsistency? And why we do not have the right allocation of the budget across employment-related programs. So why is that this is happening? Why is that countries are not spending enough on employment-related public expenditures? Why the problems of consistency? Why the problems of efficiency? And there are several reasons. The first reason is that none of the countries really has the legal mandate to implement national employment policies or the employment component of national development plans. These policies, these strategic documents are usually prepared in consultation with different line ministries. But at the end of the day, line ministries do focus on what the mandate is, and they don't necessarily own the employment-related part of the agenda. So this lack of ownership is the first part of the problem. Then comes the way the budget is managed. Starting with the macroeconomic framework, usually countries start the budget cycle by defining the macroeconomic framework. Basically, this one outlines what is going to be the level of public expenditures and already preliminary allocations to different line ministries. This macroeconomic framework is also not prepared by taking into account the objectives of the National Employment Strategy or the National Development Plan, the employment-related part of the National Development Plan. And then, although most countries these days are trying to implement what we call a results-based budgeting, right? Instead of programming the budget based on inputs, we program the budget based on results, based on outcomes. And a pro-employment budget is a type of results-based budgeting. So although countries are trying to do so, in most cases the systems that you need to have in place are not there. And in general, when you prepare the budget, when the budgets are prepared, and you need to define key performance indicators, indicators related to employment outcomes are simply not included. So again, in summary, not having a legal mandate to implement the strategy. Number two, problems with the budget process itself. They started with the macroeconomic framework, and then the lack of institutional capacity or capabilities to really implement results-based budgeting. Now, all this seems quite pessimistic, but we do think that it's possible for countries to gradually converge, move towards pro-employment budgets. And in the report, we present a few recommendations, starting with the need to have national employment policies that define explicit targets for the different objectives in terms of employment creation, improving the quality of jobs, facilitating access to jobs for different population groups and in different regions. This quantification is fundamental for them helping inform the preparation of the budget. Recommendation number two, having the legal mandate, at least to the law of finance, the legal mandate to fund the national employment policy, to implement the national employment policy. This is a mandate that can be given to the Ministry of Finance from the funding side, but also to the line ministries, who are expected when they prepare and submit their budgets to include employment-related KPIs that are consistent with the national employment policy. The macroeconomic framework, I already mentioned that. Having a macroeconomic framework that is also consistent with national employment policy, both in terms of the level, but also the preliminary allocation of expenditures across sectors. And it's even possible to consider the possibility of allocating from the top a given share of the budget towards employment-related public expenditures. And then line ministries can compete for those resources, in line with objectives of the national employment policy. The other very important recommendation, of course, is to build capacity within the different line ministries at the level of the staff in charge of preparation of the budget. Build capacity in results-based budgeting, pro-employment budgets and produce the necessary documentation, guidelines, different types of manuals, operational manuals. This is critical. But also having tools that allow line ministries to ex ante assess what can be the impact of a given project on employment outcomes. Related to this, all countries or most countries need to upgrade labor market information systems and monitoring and evaluation systems. Without these systems, it's not possible to have a pro-employment budget. It is critical to be able to not only to allocate funds to employment-related policies and programs, but to evaluate what is happening with those so that we can reduce allocations or phase out allocations to programs that are not delivering what they're expected to deliver, while allocations go to new programs or to programs that are doing well, achieving employment outcomes. So these systems are also critical. And finally, since we're talking about preparing a pro-employment budget, having consultations with different social partners is also going to be very important for the sustainability and the credibility of the process. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you for watching.